we go. Oh my god.
Friends,
okay, so
that was so weird. We clicked go live, as we do each week, and then it appeared like as a completely different video, not under this setup thing. Woo! Okay.
That's weird. I'm just waiting till it goes live on my phone to make sure that everything sounds good. I think that we're going to be good. It sounded good earlier. I just want to make sure
Fabulous.
that this goes.
If you are here with us, can you be sure to let us know if you can hear us? Tell us if the sound is okay. I was mentioning on the first weird live stream that got lost in YouTube that our mixer looked fine to us the past couple times, but we've sounded a little bit blown out.
Yeah.
And we just want to make sure that it sounds good because we know what it's like to listen to a long thing where you're like, oh, okay, can you balance your sound, please? So,
or it's like the parents from Peanuts, Charlie Brown, where it's like, wah, 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 wah. That's what it sounds like, and I don't want to.
All right, Emily says it's good.
That.
Good morning, Janine. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Amanda. If you are here live with us, say hello. Thank you. Fabulous. Okay, amazing.
And if you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much for being subscribed. Make sure you give us a rating and a review. That does wonders for us, and we are constantly trending in various places around the world, according to Apple Podcasts. Like
True.
New Zealand will pop up, like in the top 100 sometimes. It's very interesting. So the more likes and rates and reviews we get, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, so if you're here on YouTube, be sure to click the thumbs up button. And if you are listening to this on whatever podcast platform you are, give us the stars, give us the review.
All the stuff.
It really helps. Also, we love reading your comments.
We do. Yeah.
Both positive and negative. Honestly, we've gotten some really cool feedback. Some of which we had to report because it was, racist and misogynist, and that's not welcome here.
It's not the game we play.
But actual feedback and, thinking of things in a different way, that's why we're here. I did want to address one comment, if that's okay, before we dive in.
Let's do it to it.
Someone on the last video mentioned that something that we were talking about sounded preachy. And I just wanted to address that because I think that if you're joining us right now, we haven't really explained what our show is. And so I think that if you're coming off the street or you don't know what I mean by coming off the street is like walking into a store and you don't know what the store is. You don't know what this is. And so I think that we could potentially sound preachy if the context of our show isn't put into place. So I just wanted to take literally 60 seconds and explain why we created this show and what angle we're looking at everything through. Would you do that with me?
Well, yeah, and I think that's a really good distinction to make because objectively, if you weren't aware of what we do for work, this could come off a little, I would say this is preachy and a little judgy if you aren't aware of the angle that we're coming at observing the show, watching two people talk about Bachelor in Paradise.
Even though what we're doing is taking we're taking an objective, non-judgmental point of view.
Right.
So we are looking at this show. We're recapping, of course, and talking about, the producers, the plot lines, the people on it. We're huge fans of the show. And we happen to work in the mental health and relationship field. So this show is not your typical recap where we're just kind of gossiping about what we see. We are really looking at how can we use The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise as a fun and educational tool for all of us. What can we learn from it? What can we gain from it? What can we learn about mental health, sex, and relationships? And that's where sometimes we'll kind of pause in our recap. Like last time we paused to talk about the difference between gender identity, sexuality, and relationship design, right? So we want this to be educational. And if that comes off as preachy, maybe the show's not for you, and that's totally okay. But I felt like it was important to address that. Is there anything that I missed there?
No, I don't think so. I think that, we're observing it from the place that we come from, because we're all about happier, healthier relationships, and we use scientifically backed research to teach these things. And when we see someone on the show who, communicates, like we'll talk about later, like John Paul Jones on the last episode. Rachel has a few opinions about that. I can understand how that can seem a little, I can get that, but at the same time, that's what we do, and I think that it's important to address what we see in our media because, like it or not, we do learn from these things, and we do take away stuff from watching reality TV because we're humans. We observe what other humans do and begin to emulate it. I mean, that's how children learn, right? Children copy everything you do as a parent. And as you grow up, you still watch what other humans do, and if you, sense that they have something you want, or they are a way that you'd like to be, you start to emulate their actions, their words, their methods, and The Bachelor is a tricky world for that because we are supposed to be, according to our society, in relationships, and long-term ones, and monogamous ones, and all of these things, which we don't agree with all of those ideas. But if you're not there, if someone's not there to kind of call out certain parts of it, I can understand. Yeah, I get that. That's what we're all about.
Yeah. So if you ever have questions or something comes up and you're like, wow, I really disagree. Like, tell us. We're not here to talk at you. We're here to talk with you. This show is about having a conversation about something that we all love in just a way that hasn't really been done before. And that's all.
Word.
Cool?
Word.
Okay. Amazing. All right. So let's get into it. Every time we recap Paradise, it feels like the Monday episode was the week before, and I missed a week.
Honestly, my biggest complaint about recapping Paradise is the amount of content we have to deal with. 4 hours is so much. Even a regular 2-hour show is still a lot to deal with. And you get 4, and then they have to make up fillers. Honestly, it could probably be 2 1.5-hour segments. I feel like they add so much extra content to fill out the show. It's a lot to deal with, and it just kind of bums me out sometimes. Just so much.
Even though I love it.
Oh, yeah.
We both do. But,
it makes me, you know what it makes me excited for? It makes me excited for the traditional formats of the show. Because, I don't know, it's less of a clusterfuck, and, it's a lot easier to follow.
So with that, let's dive in. So on Monday night, we start off essentially right at the rose ceremony, I believe. Oh, no. No, I'm sorry. Okay.
We go all over the place. We find out that Demi and Christian, they get a together intro. They're now one panel of the intro segment.
Yeah, which was very cute.
I also, that was
So at this point, when we start on Monday, the couples are Dean and Caelynn, Clay and Nicole, Mike and Sydney, Dylan and Hannah, Demi and Christian, Tayshia and John Paul Jones, the Katie, Chris, and Jen triangle, and then this weird friend-not-friend triangle between Blake, Kristina, and Caitlin. And single is Derek. The guys have the roses, and Clay and Nicole put Derek in a hole in the sand.
Bury him in the sand.
Which is hilarious and has turned into some very funny memes. At this point, I don't know about you guys, but I just have a lot of empathy for Derek. I'm watching this, and the way that he is handling watching Demi and Christian, the way that he's processing everything, I just feel for the guy. Nobody did anything wrong, and he's doing a really good job managing his emotions.
Yeah, he's just bummed and dealing with it, and sometimes you need to get buried in a hole and sip a margarita from the hole to really think out your thoughts.
Yeah. So we see Kristina and Tayshia talking, and Tayshia is basically expressing to Kristina at this point that she has kind of always been interested in Derek and has had a soft spot for him, but it just, the beginning of Paradise didn't really lend for them to get to know each other more. And then the next scene, we see Tayshia and John Paul Jones talking, and essentially she's passively telling him to go date other people.
Well, this is something that frustrates me. And there's actually a lead into this, which is Kristina taking time to criticize John Paul Jones to Tayshia. Instead of having Kristina say, hey, Tayshia, if you're looking at John Paul Jones and Derek a little bit differently now, and you're kind of exploring your feelings, why don't you do what feels good for you? Instead, she's like, John Paul Jones isn't enough for you. He's not the right person for you. Instead of criticizing somebody, why don't you lift up the person who's feeling confused and ask them to direct their feelings the way they'd want to, rather than taking one of the two options and making them look lesser than, or criticizing them, putting them in a negative light. It's a pattern with Kristina that I've seen, at least in this season, and that just bothers me a little bit. Like, hey, Tayshia, you're feeling this. Go explore that instead of being like, well, I think this person sucks for you. I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation.
No, I love that. I think that's such an interesting point because I think we do that in real life too. It's like we need to put down something in order for the other thing to be, for us,
like better.
Instead of just saying like, both things are good, I prefer this.
Like, I want this more. Both things are also good, though.
Right.
Yeah. That's like, well...
Like, I like zucchini and cucumber. Today, I really want cucumber. I don't have to be like, zucchini's disgusting. Zucchini's not good enough for me. I want cucumber.
I think it says a lot about the two of us that I was about to use an almost identical food metaphor, but you picked zucchini and cucumber, and I was going with burgers and hot dogs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So anyway, here's my issue with Tayshia talking to John Paul Jones about her feelings. I wish that she could have just said, hey, this is the format of the show. I'm interested in Derek. I think you're great, but I need to go explore this. Instead of, she was trying to lead John Paul Jones to his own conclusion that he needs to go for other dates. Instead of saying, hey, people are coming down and I want you to explore yourself and don't feel tied down. She could be like, I want to go explore something. I'm leaving this. Sorry for me. You do you. Like, it's more direct, and a lot of people can take offense from direct communication, but at least it's not this passive, wishy-washy thing.
Yeah, and I think we talked about last time the difference between assertive and aggressive communication styles, and this was not assertive or aggressive, it was just passive.
Yeah.
And it's not that, the problem with passive communication is it leaves a lot open to interpretation because we're not being overt with what we're saying, which is kind of part of the reason why we see, and I'm in no way blaming Tayshia for John Paul Jones' actions, but because he was still wanting to pursue Tayshia, it's kind of how we see John Paul Jones spiral. It's very interesting. Kyle has a really interesting perspective on Kristina because, for those of us who have been watching this season, the show,
like, do I?
For a really long time, we've seen Kristina in very different lights. Kyle has not seen any other portrayals of Kristina aside from this season.
I haven't seen her be a positive person.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. And Janine, I agree with you. Janine says, talking negatively about someone your friend may end up in a relationship with could negatively affect the friendship. And Shirley says that Tayshia wants to hedge her bets. That was my feeling. It felt to me as though Tayshia wanted to explore things with Derek, but because she didn't know where Derek stood, she didn't want to necessarily cut off the relationship with John Paul Jones. Not that she doesn't like JPJ.
No.
But that she's interested in Derek more, but because she didn't know what he wanted, she wasn't quite ready to sever that, especially with the men having roses.
I can see that. Here's my assessment as we get into the rest of, because we got a lot to get into. Here's my assessment, though, really quickly on John Paul Jones, because we're going to talk a lot about him in this episode. Unfortunately, I guess. He's, if anything, super eccentric. He does what seems to be his thing all the time. In fact, it's almost like a pure focus of John Paul Jones. Like, he just does whatever he seems to want to do. If that's cartwheels on the beach, sure. If it's being a little super weird and kind of having a conversation with himself within the confines of a conversation with somebody else, he does that too. And I think that while Tayshia finds him interesting, it's also too much for her. Like, he needs someone who can meet him at his level of eccentricity.
Yeah.
I think eccentricity.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, because of that reason, I think that he doesn't really do well within the franchise, and that's why Chris brought him out at the beginning or the ending of Hannah's season to be like, you're going to have a crazy time in paradise, and he's like, yep, I'm going to have a crazy time in paradise. I think that he is just kind of a weird dude. Not a bad person, but just sort of out there.
So I agree with you until we see how he behaves in Tuesday's episode. So
absolutely.
I'm having trouble even commenting on Monday's episode with him because of what happens on Tuesday.
Well, that's fine. His involvement on the Monday episode's pretty minimal, but
he goes on the date with Tahzjuan. It's like a huge storyline.
Right, but it doesn't actually affect, like, what... Anyway.
Okay.
That's what... So,
yeah. So, so Tahzjuan arrives, and she says, she's ready to step on toes, and it's all about her. I was very frustrated with the fact that... So, okay. I'm going to pick my words very carefully here. I think that women and men of color are vastly underrepresented on the Bachelor franchise.
I agree.
And I don't like the fact that the two darker-skinned women were portrayed as Onyeka, who was portrayed as undesirable, and then Tahzjuan, who was portrayed as crazy.
Yeah.
Now, did they do things to contribute to that? Sure. But I also think that many of the women of lighter skin also have done things, and they're not getting as severe of an edit. So I don't love that. I wish that there were more women of color and men of color that got just the edit that...
The same edit that Hannah G gets?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that I just wanted to say that on the front, because I do have, some constructive criticism for Tahzjuan, but
Absolutely.
I also want to acknowledge that it's a very, I cannot understand what it's like to be a woman of color in this franchise. I will never, or in the world, right? Like, I'm a white redhead. I cannot put myself in her shoes in that way. And I don't love the fact that she was edited with the she's fucking crazy.
Well, I think that's the key here, is that there's no lack of content. They're on camera 24/7 the entire time on the beach, and it's nonstop. So it's not like the editors are like, well, we don't have anything to work with, this is all we can do. It's very intentionally shown this way, and I think that's what really bothers me, is that, if someone's not creating drama in the most extreme way, they're just not on camera. I mean, how much have we seen Dylan and Hannah G?
Right, because there's nothing going on.
And so it seems odd to me that the Bachelor franchise kind of continues with these narratives, and it's not a good look.
Yeah, it's the same on Rachel's season when Kenny got called aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
And it was this whole narrative. It's the same thing. To me, The Bachelor has the responsibility of breaking this. And Emily, I agree with you that her actions are still her responsibility. Where I get frustrated is that I don't think that we got to see all of it. And I think that it was cut and edited in a way that portrayed it as more crazy and more unhinged.
Yeah.
And I personally, as like a mental health standpoint, I think something was happening. I think that she was either getting off of a medication, she was coping with a new environment, and something was not right.
Like super stressed or something.
She was having some sort of issue.
Yeah.
And the way that they portrayed it was like with the cuckoo music in the background. And
it's not good.
I didn't like the trivialization of the fact that she was clearly not well.
Flaky Gaming suggests that she could feel I think we interacted with you before, feels that the producer's impact in this episode is way more obvious than usual, and I kind of agree.
With
the thing with Tahzjuan, I'm always so hesitant to be like, well, something's wrong with this person. The amount of Gatorade they were having her drink and the amount of food they were giving her, to me, showed either she ate nothing and then drank a bunch.
Right.
Which will make you sweat a ton and really struggle in the heat. Or they don't know, like, either she came on super dehydrated, they had you'll see later the doctors, like, talk to her, either she's dehydrated or she's having a panic attack. There's a lot that goes into that reaction, has multiple factors that could cause exactly what we saw on camera. And it's really unfortunate they took the amount of time to show it in all of its, like, visceral realism. It's like when they showed, I forget who it was, they showed someone have, like, a legit panic attack, and it's a little bit too much.
She was on Ari's season. She's a mom.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who it was, though.
She has the cute little mole right here.
Something with a K? She was supposed to be a villain, but then she wasn't a villain because she turns out she's super normal.
Yeah,
Wait,
it's with
Heather?
a C. No.
Kristina. Caelynn?
Someone help! You guys know who we're talking about.
Anyway, but so the show has done this a couple of times. So they'll show almost a too visceral, emotional situation, and I think that for the amount of time that Tahzjuan had been on this season, it was a little heavy-handed and a little damning, and there's almost nothing she could have done to get a favorable edit in this circumstance. I think that I feel like production threw her under the bus, and whatever was going on with her did not help. Thank you, Chelsea.
Gosh.
Oh my god.
Thank you.
Woo! All right, that's it. Wrap it up.
Yeah, and we're done. So JPJ makes a joke, Taj one-on-one, which was funny and very John Paul Jones. They have a very not intelligent conversation about her name and the origin of her name, which I don't even want to get into.
Gloss over that one.
He eats the food on the date, and she is like, dude, you are not supposed to eat. So this is where I think that editing came in, is that when we see her with JPJ on that date, she's actually really funny and down to earth.
Yeah, and she's like, dude, don't eat. Like, this is part of the show. Like, you're not supposed to. Like, she's aware of what's happened. That's what I'm.
She's like, I've never even been on a one-on-one, and I know you're not supposed to eat that food. Like,
right. Because it doesn't sound good. That's why. She even says it. It doesn't sound good. That's why they don't want us to eat.
Yeah.
Like, and it's interesting that they even aired that part of the date, because usually you don't see the contestants talking about the format.
It was very meta.
Really?
And then John Paul Jones begins to dry heave for the second or third time this season. I don't know about y'all, but he seems like something is also off with him. And I don't mean that in a, like, I think he's, like, disturbed or something.
No.
There is something, like, Kyle paused it and looked at me and he goes, did he sneak edibles in to Paradise?
I mean, this is the thing. I'm always so hesitant to suggest that someone is under the influence of something or on something. I bartended for a very long time. I'm pretty good at spotting people who are under the influence of something.
And I worked in substance rehabs.
Right. Like, it's not my first rodeo seeing someone who's a little messed up, but at the same time, like, he's normal in some segments, and then he's asleep in some segments. He throws up, like, I think 2 or 3 times. Or he falls asleep in the pool. There's that one segment.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. There are many legitimate medications and prescriptions that have similar side effects like that. So maybe he is taking something that he's prescribed and it's not interacting with him well. There's a lot that happens. So I'm hesitant to say, well, he's either on something, coming down from something, or he's missing something.
We don't know.
Something about the way he interacts for the 2 episodes that we're recapping, and in previous episodes, it is within my personal opinion, based on my experience, that something is up with him and his physical chemistry.
Well, I think the key thing is that if he were consistent the whole time, that would be one thing. Then we can just say, wow, that seems to be how he is.
But he's always napping.
No, it's not that.
No.
It's that sometimes he seems incredibly coherent and he doesn't have this, like, crush from Finding Nemo voice. And then other times he is incredibly, like, he seems stoned, like, super stoned.
But then he's, like, super focused sometimes.
But then he's, like, very focused, and then other times he's very distracted. It's so inconsistent. And, again, we're not here to, like, diagnose or say that something's wrong with him.
No.
But it's very alarming, the inconsistency. And I, for one, am really over hearing the dry heaving sounds. Yeah. I don't like seeing people throw up. I've never liked it. I don't like seeing myself throw up. It is just something that I don't enjoy. And the sounds are, like, very...
well, there's a reason why they don't eat on dates. It's because the sounds are gross, and yet they pipe through the sounds of him throwing up. Okay, so
Tahzjuan says, if he vomits on me, we're taking a shower together. Which is, like...
Okay, way to turn a bad thing into a good thing.
I know.
Also gross.
I know, but I was like, hey, at least you're looking at the... Like, I wish that we had seen more of that sense of humor. Because I think that that's what she was doing with the, like, pigeon seagull thing. Like, she was trying to be funny. And it just... I don't know if it was how it came out or how it was edited. But we all have to remember that the editors of the show are geniuses. And the producers of the show are geniuses. So as much as we are taking what we're seeing and commenting on that, we, like collective we, cannot forget the influence on both the producer side and the editing side.
Totally. Which also leads to my confusion when at the end of the date, or towards the end of the dinner, John Paul Jones thinks the night is going well. Which, okay, buddy, that is something that you think that I don't agree with. So anyway, we get a quick clip of people on the beach trash-talking Colton. Great for him. Love seeing people for no reason lash out at previous people on the show. That's stupid. And then
they were talking about how Colton was their worst kiss, just for context.
Who cares? So then we get to see JPJ and Tahzjuan dance, and then they make out in the water.
Yeah. So then we cut to a commercial. And Caelynn, Demi, and Wells are chatting. Wells is obviously behind the bar, and Caelynn and Demi are there. And Demi and Wells are precautioning Caelynn to not necessarily like have walls up, but just to talk to Dean and to understand what he's doing. I wrote down, every other sentence that comes out of Wells and Demi's mouth is phrased poorly. I didn't like some of the comments were very judgmental, but what they were clearly trying to get at, and they mentioned a couple times, was that there needs to be a conversation to define expectations and define the relationship. And that's really all it was, but it was coming through as, he lives in a van, and, like, he's not going to give you the life. Dean. Like, they've kind of put him in this box of he's this fuckboy, and don't get your heart attached. Yeah,
I wrote down, this is a way blown out of proportion, hey, you two should have the talk.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
The way it was being phrased was much more serious than it actually is.
Yeah.
And, so we got to commercial, and we open back up to talking about Nicole and Clay for a second, and they...
Wait, pause for a sec. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that was an entire segment in between commercials.
Oh, yeah. Was Wells and Demi talking to Caelynn?
Yeah.
On that note, I'm tired of seeing Caelynn on camera. I don't like the thing the producers do for her, which is... She is sad because she doesn't have the thing that she wants, and gets an in-the-moment interview talking about why she's sad because she doesn't get the thing she wants. And then, the next second, she gets the thing that she wants. Oh, Dean won't talk to me. Oh my god, Dean's talking to me. Oh, I don't know if I like this. Oh my god, now I like this. It's so blown out of proportion. It's so ridiculous. And then when she's not doing that, she's trash-talking other people. I'm bored of her.
So I wrote down later in the notes, and I just won't read this then, but it applies now, is that Caelynn seems to, her internal sense of being and her feelings they seem to be at least 100% based on external factors. So when things are going on around her that she likes, and she's getting positive feedback, and she's connecting with people externally, she seems to be very happy. And then the second that her external circumstances change, she is no longer able to have happiness. And so it reminds me of people who seek out relationship to complete them. And for podcast listeners, I'm using air quotes. They seek out relationships to complete them rather than being a complete person, having their own sense of happiness, and then finding a person or people to add to that. And it's hard to watch Caelynn because you can see throughout the 2 episodes, she's like this. And that's because she's relying on all of these external things instead of having an internal sense of self and kind of more like this. It's okay to obviously feel sad and happy and go up and down, but it seems as though her entire sense of self goes up and down. I mean, and we see this in the wedding in the 2nd episode where she is just so down, and then Connor walks around the corner and she's like, I'm back! Like, you were just really upset about Dean leaving.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get there when we get there, but it's a very interesting thing.
And this is, so we get into Caelynn talking to Dean about the future of their relationship, and on the topic of earlier, spending a long time in the bar industry, I've been watching a lot of people's physicality and like their, the way they act when they are feeling things. And the second Caelynn brings up Dean's reputation, he just goes full blank face. He's like, I can see him just shrink back into his mind about what does that mean? What are people saying about me? Am I good enough for this? What do I think about myself? He's been fairly open about feeling like he doesn't really know what he wants. And I also being very aware of who he was in previous iterations of the show. And I think that he, A, hasn't fully come to terms with that. B, really isn't sure what he wants to do with himself, which, by the way, I'd like to say is okay. You don't need to have it all figured out. I don't think that if you're that up in the air, you should be on a show where there's an expectation of a relationship at the end of it.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. But I also think that this reputation of his that he is very open about, but having other people keep talking about it and having it affect his current relationship when he hasn't done anything to continue on that reputation really messes with him. And you can kind of see it.
Yeah, instead she says, you have a reputation. Those are her words. And instead of saying that, she could say, I want to be with you after this, and I'm scared because of what I've seen in the past.
Or heard. Right.
Right? So instead of saying, you have a reputation, you did this, it's, I want to be with you and I'm scared. That is a much healthier and better way of going about it, and you're going to get a much better response from somebody that way.
Yeah.
Because the second we as humans hear you, our walls go up like, whoa. What are you saying about me? And if it's not a visual response, like Kyle's describing, you can kind of see Dean.
You see his walls go up.
He shuts down a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So they talk for a little bit. To me, he just really doesn't like people continuing to bring up the stereotype about him. He's aware of what he used to do.
Yep.
He's actively not doing it now. So once you move forward from something, having people continue to bring it up, I mean, that sucks. Especially for someone who clearly, for all of the perceived issues that he's had in the past, is very emotionally connected to himself. Like, he's trying to figure out who that is and who he is on the other side. And I think that having this come back up is emotionally very wounding for him.
Yeah, I agree. There was so much subtext in this conversation, and subtext is probably my least favorite thing in the entire world. Because it's when we say one thing and then we're expecting the other person to understand some secondary meaning behind it.
Yep.
And that's when you then confront it and you're like, well, and you respond to what they said, and then instead they're like, well, you know what I meant. And you're like,
I don't.
No, I know what you said. I'm literally hearing what you said. Now, then Dean says, it's basically a convince me otherwise situation. Now, this to me, I knew the second he said this, I was like, oh my God, people are going to blow him up for this. Not the best phrasing, obviously. To me, this was him being sad, scared, hurt, and saying, what is the point of me trying to do anything outside of what is currently making me happy? Because I just get shit for it. So convince me why I should do anything besides go be in my van and be happy.
I can't fault him for going to that. I understand it. I don't think it's the best way of going about it. But I also understand, trying to figure out who you are, trying to move forward from this stereotype, having it brought back up to you. I understand the thought process that led to the, fuck it, I'm done. Like, you convinced me because otherwise I'm done.
But
I don't care.
He didn't even say it like that. It wasn't like a state your argument. It was like, at this point, it's basically like a convince me otherwise situation. And I think that it wasn't the best thing said. It was a perfect example of what happens when someone feels defensive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That, to me, was his protection coming out and his self-preservation.
I think at the end of the conversation...
Again, the subtext.
Right,
like,
I think at the end of the conversation, Caelynn is realizing
I was
that...
like, who's Kaylee?
Wanting a traditional relationship as she understands it from a non-traditional person is like trying to squeeze water from a rock.
Yeah.
Like, I see that she... In that moment, I think that she finally realized a little bit, like, oh, he does not walk in the same hallway that I do. So getting him to try that is going to be really, really difficult. I think she's aware of that.
And I want to just acknowledge what you had said before. We don't talk a lot after the show because we want to leave it for live on camera so that if we disagree, we can then like process it live with you guys or with you. But one of the things that we did talk about last night was that if Dean truly was not looking for a relationship and just wanted to come have fun, that's not cool.
Go to Vegas.
Like, this show, in the way that it's presented to us, is that it is a second chance at finding love. It is people who either didn't find somebody on The Bachelor, Bachelorette, or did, and then it didn't work out. And they are here to find somebody else.
That's literally what they say each time the show opens.
Right. So I don't think, and I know you agree with this because we talked about it, I don't think that he had any business being on the show if that was truly his intention. I'm glad he was honest about it.
Right.
I also don't understand why then he was allowed on the show.
Yeah, it just, to me, it kind of diminishes the people who are on the show for exactly the right reasons. It diminishes their time because now you have a well-known Bachelor person who's a significant player in the game of the beach, not like a player in general. I'm not trying to feed into the stereotype here, but he's a significant player in this game and obviously creates drama, distraction, contest for a lot of people. Having him be flaky even on his reasons for coming, that's what I disagree with because it diminishes someone like, I don't know, whoever else, like any other person on the beach's experience. That's my thing. Okay, so moving on from that.
Hayley Ferguson enters. Interesting. Everybody in the comments is saying that Dean went on a podcast and said that he went on for the money.
Oof. Well.
Which, like, again, that's not cool.
Great. Yeah.
Like, that's not.
Go do The Amazing Race.
Or, like, go shill Sugar Bear hair care. Like,
Does Sugar Bear have a mustache line? He could do that.
Right. Like, it's yeah. Okay. Anyway, so Hayley, who is one half of Hayley and Emily, come in, and she pulls John Paul Jones right away.
She wants to talk to him.
And this is where Tahzjuan starts to essentially saying really rude and yucky things about Hayley. She talks about like how she can't function without her twin.
Yeah, she seems to suggest that Hayley is an incomplete person
without her twin.
Without the twin. But like not dancing around it, but like saying it. Like she said those things and like not like a joke, like, well, maybe she can only jump rope by herself. Like alluding to it, she just went right for that whole thing.
Yeah, so then this is when we kind of get more of the Tahzjuan needing assistance.
Right. Hayley asks John Paul Jones on the date, and Tahzjuan appears to be stunned by this.
And Hayley and John Paul Jones go on the date. They go horseback riding, and this is where we get the hands up the red bathing suit butt sunscreen shot.
There was so much teasing of that in the like commercials for the show.
And then it was like half a second.
And then it was like half a second, and it was with two people that you couldn't have told me it was going to happen. In fact, when they're on the beach, I turned to Rachel and I'm like, that's the red bikini! That's the thing we're going to see! And then it was just over. And also really weird for a first date. I thought that Caelynn and Blake doing like the sexy acro yoga was a little bit much on a first date, but like, wow, that was a lot of hands on a lot of butt with a lot of sunscreen.
So Emily in the comments said something I want to read so that all the podcast people can hear. She's a twin. She said, as a twin, I am completely offended by that comment to Hayley. People are always telling me that about my twin and I. Twins are two different people and can live separate lives. Yes.
Hell yes.
Yes. And that comment was not okay.
Yeah. And you're right. I hadn't considered that. I used to work with one of two twins, and they're, super amazing. That would happen all the time, though. They would get the weirdest comments because they were twins. And I just think it's odd. I think that human beings can't let go of something that's outside of, like, the normal thing. But, like, there are plenty of twins, so it isn't. I don't understand why people are so weird about that. Thank you for saying that, Emily. It's appreciated.
Yeah. And, I think that it's important to recognize that if Dean did go on the show for money, I don't think there's anything wrong for looking out for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Just like nobody really goes on reality TV now without some sort of other motive besides I'm going to find love. I think what the issue is that with Paradise in particular, it is people who have already gained some sort of notoriety. We know who most of these people are before they come on.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise is that they're looking for a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, with each other.
Yeah.
You even get sent home if you're not in a pair.
Right. So I think that...
And it's just shitty to the other people. If you're going to go on for the money, then get there and tell them, I'm here just to have fun.
Yeah.
Right? You don't lead people on, not tell anybody that, and then after the show's over, be like, oh, I just went on for the money. Like, if I were Caelynn, I'd be like, fuck you.
Right. I'd be pissed. I'd be super pissed. So while John Paul Jones goes on the date and rubs sunscreen all over Hayley's butt, that's when Tahzjuan is visited by the medical staff because she passes out a bit, which is, who knows? We've already tried to talk about that. I don't know why. We're not sure.
And I wish they would have told us. Because, again, it lended to this narrative of she's just crazy. And that's not okay.
Right. And it doesn't help that the doctors are like, your blood pressure's fine. Your blood sugar's fine. Everything's fine. And she's... it's odd the way they go about that. So,
then we get to Taje and Derek. So...
Yeah, I was going to say.
Tayshia and Derek sit down to talk, and he apologizes for getting emotional. Tayshia encourages him to get emotional, which I was very happy to see. And she says to him, one of the best things I've ever heard someone on The Bachelor say to somebody else. She says, Demi's getting what she wants. What do you want? What is going to make you happy?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I know that Tayshia obviously had the motive of hopefully he's going to say me. And it was still very much, she was letting him just feel his feelings and talk it through. And that is what a good friend does. That's what a good human does.
Absolutely.
It was really wonderful. And he says that he's crazy attracted to Tayshia, but he doesn't know how to take a next step post-Demi. And basically questions if he is in an emotional state to be there.
Right.
Again, because the premise is getting in a relationship. And if he is not in the mindset to be able to move forward from Demi, then he would remove himself.
Right.
And Tayshia says, she wants him to move on and explore a relationship with her. She says that, I believe, in an ITM, not to him.
Yeah.
They hug, and it's a very lovely moment.
Right. We go to a commercial, come back to the cocktail party time.
It's the rose ceremony time, cocktail party. There's 5 roses up for grabs.
I really enjoyed, I know that they're obviously do something different, but I like how it started out with in the moment interview with Christian, and she's like, I don't know how any of this is going to work. I've never been to a rose ceremony before.
She's like, I think the guys give out roses to the girls.
I don't know how it's going to work. I just appreciate from someone who's not part of the franchise, but was adjacent of the franchise through her friends group and how was on it. I appreciate her candor around not really sure, being sure what's going on. I just enjoyed that in the moment.
And this is when we get into the Blake, Caelynn, Kristina thing. So we got a lot of feedback from y'all about our comments around the Caelynn, Kristina thing. And
y'all?
Yeah. I want to remind all of us, including myself, that we comment on this show before we read other people's comments on the show.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about the interaction between when we were talking about the interaction between Caelynn and Kristina last week, we had not read anything from either of them. We had not seen any of the comments that conversation, was portrayed differently, how it was edited and split up. We are commenting on what we see.
Right.
And based on what we saw, I stand by what we said.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, anyone... See, that's the power of the editing. Anyone can go off after the show and say, well, they didn't show the part where I saved a bunch of people's lives on the beach. And you're like, okay, you can say that. My issue here is that, sure, the conversation could have gone on longer. Sure, it could have gone differently. But what we have seen Kristina do, that conversation is par for the course. Yeah. She's been antagonistic. She has blindsided people in their conversations a couple of times. and she has clearly tried to torpedo actual budding relationships for her own self-gain, not with the people who are in relationships either. It's weird.
Yeah, so Caelynn sets up a little date for Blake.
It's a mini stagecoach.
Yeah, she says it's a mini VIP stagecoach.
But see, this is why I like Caelynn so much, is that she takes all the stuff about Blake, that people say, all the negative stuff, and puts it aside, and she just kind of makes fun of him.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty emotionally healthy thing to do, instead of focusing on all the negative stuff like so many people on this show have done. She's like, haha, people make fun of your stagecoach. Now, I made you a mini one.
She has said some things that are not okay. She has used terms to describe other women that I don't agree with.
Like what? I forget.
I mean, similar to Caelynn, she says things like stupid bitch, and that stuff is not okay. And it's hard to hear somebody say women should always support women and then
say that,
walk away and said stupid bitch. Like, that's not supporting women. So there is a bit of like, but I think that truly comes out of frustration and her overall frustration with the situation. Yeah, so I like Caelynn. Yep. So Kristina comes and interrupts Blake and Caelynn.
After Blake tells Caelynn, very important here, that she is, and I quote, 100% getting his rose. Let's just store that in the back of your head.
So Kristina interrupts, and she basically tells Blake that if he gives Caelynn the rose, that means that he's leading her on if he doesn't like her that much. And he says to her, which I was very proud of him in this moment, he says, what are you trying to get out of this conversation? And then
says the rose.
And then he says that Kristina is one of his closest friends. And this is where I start to not understand. She came on the show saying, I'm here to get revenge on Blake. She ambushed Blake, wasted her date on taking Blake somewhere to talk to him.
Yep.
And he's saying that she's one of his closest friends? Like, do your close friends treat you that way? If somebody did to me what Kristina did to Blake, they would not even not be a close friend. They would probably not be a friend. Period. I have people who don't like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised at Kristina's power over Blake. I unfortunately think that he is such an emotional person, and he's forming many great connections to his emotions, but like anyone trying to do something and change the way they are or understand themselves better, that's messy. And unfortunately, I think that Kristina is taking advantage of his emotional vulnerability post all the stagecoach drama early on. And now Blake is playing it as safe as possible. He just wants to have fun. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. I see Kristina as preying on that perceived weakness, which is what I would actually call sensitivity and empathy. I think she's preying on that because she knows Blake is in a very unsure position in his time on the beach. And by saying, you'll hurt me, you've known me longer, we have this connection, she's actually torpedoing the possibility of Caelynn having a relationship with Blake. And it shows another level of
manipulation.
I was going to say intention, but yeah, because she's intentionally manipulating the situation. And then she does something so shitty. This is my biggest issue of this conversation. Because after she talks to Blake, now Blake is not 100% on giving Caelynn his rose, Kristina says in an ITM, if Caelynn wanted Blake, she should have gone after him at Stagecoach. Hold on. If you're going to be mad at Caelynn, if you're going to create all that drama, now you're saying Caelynn should have been in on that whole thing? Go fuck. That's the dumbest thing you could have said, because it makes you look like the most petty person possible.
And hypocritical.
Absolutely. If you're so mad that Blake went after Caelynn, or more realistically, Caelynn went after Blake at Stagecoach, and Blake followed through on it, and then was after Hannah also, and was texting whoever, why on earth would you say, well, Caelynn should have gone after him as Stagecoach, when he was doing all the things that I was also mad at him for? What? It's ridiculous, and it makes you look like a liar.
Yeah, she is emotionally manipulating Blake, and
it's not
okay.
Right, what a whirlwind for him, too. Everyone hated him in the first 2 episodes, and now I feel so bad for him.
I felt bad for him right away, because I think that he was being treated in a way that was like he cheated on a long-term girlfriend.
I just want to hug him.
Yeah, I do too.
Blake. So
then Blake pulls Caelynn aside after the conversation, and Caelynn says, "Is this after speaking with Kristina?"
I love that. He says, "Well, now I'm not really sure," and he's doing that wishy-washy, "Well, I don't know what."
And he
goes,
says,
"Yes." After
yes.
talking to Kristina, and he's like, "Yeah."
And he goes, "Yeah." So then we go to a commercial.
I also noticed Blake seems to want to please whoever he talks to most recently, so if you want to keep on the show longer with him, make sure you talk to him last before a rose ceremony. That seems to be the deciding factor here.
It was really hard to see this. So
yeah, not fun.
We get into, do we need to talk about the Demi JPJ Christian thing?
No, I would say that...
I think it wasn't necessary in the episode.
I don't think so. I think that also lays into... The one thing I will mention about it is that towards the end when Demi's telling Christian, like, don't worry about it, we're not, like, flirting, he's just that way. He's like his own thing. That leads into what I was talking about earlier about how he's super eccentric. And the people who have known him longer also know that he's like just kind of doing his own. So like you let him do his own thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But beyond that, that's not a point.
So then Hayley and John Paul Jones talk, and Tahzjuan comes to pull him away. This is where we get more about the pigeon seagull thing. There was clearly a conversation on Tahzjuan and JPJ's date where they talked about being seagulls. This was clearly something that we did not see.
Yeah.
And then it makes Tahzjuan look crazy because she is clearly saying something that had happened, but to just the viewer's eyes, it's like, what is she talking about?
Yeah. But we get to see... So we see JPJ talk about how he wants Tayshia, not anyone else. So then we see Tayshia go over to Derek to check in with him, see how he's feeling. He's like, I thought about it. I want to stay on the show. I want to give it now his 3rd shot, or like he's been on the show before, so like 5th shot. He wants to give it his next shot at finding love, finding a relationship, and she's happy, so they make out.
Yeah.
And he also he expresses his intention to focus on her. So then they make out. It wasn't just like, hey, you're on the show, let's make out. It's, I'm into you, let's look at this. And then the making out.
I want to acknowledge Sarah in the comments said something really insightful. I think Kristina's Stagecoach comment shows that Kristina is still bitter about Blake's behavior at Stagecoach and is trying to sabotage his future relationships to make things quote-unquote even.
Oh. Well, then I bet she was super triggered when Caelynn made a mini Stagecoach.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was really, really insightful.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. All right.
And Janine, I agree with you about friendship being mistaken for something more with JPJ and Demi, and Christian setting that boundary of what she's okay with and not okay with. It was a really great moment. I wish that they had actually talked about it more. Yeah. It felt like they squeezed it in, which felt... It didn't go in line with the other plot lines of what we were talking about, which is frustrating.
Right.
Okay.
We get to see a commercial, and then Caelynn expressing concern about Dean, but then she loves Dean the next second because he has a birthday cake for her because it's her birthday.
Yeah. And then Dean thanks her for putting up with him. And I don't love this because it seems like because he doesn't want to quote-unquote settle down, that he's not a good guy.
Or like a good partner.
And I think that, if you're being honest and saying, I'm not ready to settle down yet, I'm enjoying living out of my RV, I'm enjoying doing this, you can still be a good guy.
Yeah.
Again, don't think he needed to come on the show.
No. But
he's there.
Not a bad person.
And he's being honest. Not a bad guy.
So, this annoys me. It continues to annoy me. Caelynn says...
It continues to annoy you?
It continues to annoy me. Caelynn says, she's so amazed by Dean because he's going out of his comfort zone. Dude asked production for a cake and then told everyone to sing happy birthday. If that's going out of your comfort zone, then that is hugely indicative of a larger problem.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that going out of your comfort zone is not asking production for a cake. I don't know what Caelynn meant to say.
Yeah.
But I'm very confused by that because what?
Yeah. So we finally see Chris Bukowski for literally the first time in the whole episode.
Oh, yeah. We wondered where he was.
We were both like, where's Chris? Where? And then, oh, there he is.
He's wherever Hannah G was hanging out because I didn't see her on camera either.
Yeah. And he is deciding between the Jen and Katie situation. Jen and Chris talk, and then Katie interrupts. They talk. Then everybody's up in the palapa. Chris Harrison comes in, and it's time for the rose ceremony. Chris Harrison talks about how they're going to change the rules a little bit, and Demi gets to hand out the first rose to Christian, which, okay.
That's not a big deal. We get a big dramatic thing at the end of the last episode. I'm going to change the rules, everybody. Oh, Demi just picks Christian, and then we move on with the traditional format. It's not breaking the rules. That's just making an exception based on the unexpected circumstances, which are totally expected, of the show.
Yeah. So Demi gives her rose to Christian.
It's cute.
Dylan to Hannah. Clay to Nicole, Mike to Sydney, Dean to Caelynn, Blake to Kristina.
And the villain music begins to play.
Derek gives Tayshia his rose, and this is the first time that we get this, like, John Paul Jones thinks that Derek is swooping in on Tayshia, and it's really the opposite, as we all see as viewers, is Tayshia is very interested in Derek.
She started pursuing him first.
So then John Paul Jones gives his rose to Hayley, and Chris Bukowski gives his rose to Katie. And I am very glad he gave his rose to Katie. It's not that I don't like Jen. I think Jen is lovely. Chris and Katie had a really wonderful relationship. She said something that kind of fucked things up, and she recognized it, and they healed from it. And I think that they will end up being closer because of this. I think it's a great example of how a misunderstanding and how certain types of conflict can actually bring you together and understand each other more. So I was very, very happy to see that.
Well, and that's the conversation that they had. We don't even have to go over it that much, but it was a great way of her saying, I know I said this, not what I meant. I meant to say this, and that's why when you did this, I was hurt, but I wanted to be clear that I'm into you. I was trying to make sure you didn't feel pressure, but I'm real. And he's like, oh, just say that next time. And here we are. Now they're happy together. Also, I don't know what's the situation. Janine's asking me if I'm channeling the situation. I don't know what the situation is.
That's that guy from, is he from Jersey Shore?
Oh, never seen it.
I don't know.
The answer is no. And if it is, then he's channeling me. So I do feel bad for Jen and Caitlin in this one case because it sucks to come on the beach with one or two options each. Like, really, they had one actual real option. Yeah. Like, I understand that's the format of the show, and I understand if you come on to the show late, you are left with you've got to be a little more aggressive. You have shittier options. I still feel a little bad, though. That sucks.
Yeah. So Dean pulls Caelynn aside to talk. We hear him say he doesn't know if he can offer her a relationship right after he gives her the rose.
Oh, no.
And he pulls her aside to talk, and we hear her say, why are you doing this? It's still my birthday. And then this show ends.
I could not stand the tone in which he used to say, but it's my birthday. I just didn't like it.
This was tiring. So that's the end of night one, so let's just take a stretch break. If you are here with us on YouTube, don't forget to click that thumbs up button. It helps other people find this video, our podcast, and,
all the good things.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
The beginning of, or actually a lot of, the next episode, Rachel has the majority of the notes on her phone, so I'm going to be responding to what she says and adding in, as I did not take notes for this segment. Until the part of the way through.
Yeah. Okay, so, night 2. You guys still with us?
Night 2, the producers boogaloo. They're all up in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, hardcore. It's
hardcore.
And on one hand, I understand it. On the other, a little heavy-handed. Let's go into it.
Okay. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, friends.
Also, hit that thumbs up. Emily asks, does Caelynn think she's exempt from bad things, air quotes, happening to her just because it's a birthday? Yes, I believe that she thinks she could walk into a busy street and not get hit by a car because it's her birthday.
Okay, now, I will say,
Dean
could have waited
until
the next morning to have this conversation.
Completely.
There was no need to have this talk immediately after giving her the rose.
I
Zero.
think this is the first time we see production doing something. I think they told him to do it on the same day.
That's possible.
I don't know. Okay, so Dean pulls her off on her birthday. I can't stand it.
They go sit down on a palapa, and Dean says, I know I won't be able to get to where you need me by the end of this. And he basically says that because they'll like each other more in 2 weeks, that he wants to end it now, and that the quote-unquote right thing to do is to send himself home. And he says, and this statement made me incredibly sad, he says, I think you deserve someone better than me, to be perfectly honest.
Buddy, come on.
So here's my question with this. Why, okay, and I think we answered it already in the previous discussion, but why did he come on this show?
That's my question.
If he cannot offer any bit of a relationship, then you don't go on a show where the goal is to be in a relationship.
Right. Like, if you want to live in your van and live, like, in a major metropolitan city or on the outskirts and date someone within the city, that's okay.
That's
but
cool.
If he wants to be nomadic and not actually be able to date anyone because he's moving around so much, then why are you in a show in which everyone talks about what happens when you go back to the real world? Yeah. That's just my thing. Like, I don't get it.
Dean leaves. This timing, Bye, Dean. I mean, I haven't, you all have heard me talk about how I haven't loved Caelynn's behavior on the show. Yeah. However, that does not take away from the fact that this sucked for her.
Oh, she's still very sad.
I mean, I felt really awful for her in this moment. It sucked.
Justifiably sad.
And Katie says my favorite quote of the whole 2 nights. She says, you're never an idiot for letting yourself feel all the feelings.
And
I love Katie.
And yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So Derek says to Caelynn, I don't think he knows who he is yet. He's still trying to figure that out. It's not up to you to fix him. Again, spot on.
Yeah. Quite true.
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah.
So John Paul Jones says, we cut over to him, it's difficult to see the woman you're in love with be into another guy.
Have we heard that he's in love with Tayshia?
I
don't.
I think he said he's falling.
So, well, the falling thing, that's a very Bachelor thing. That's just saying that you have strong feelings for somebody. But even if he is in love with her, my question is the how. Because they spent, like, this much time together. And they've only been on the beach for like 10 days or something. Like, what? How do you form these feelings? I understand the strong like, or the idea that you're falling, but like, the woman I'm in love with is on this beach. I don't believe you.
Yes. So Blake sees John Paul Jones crying, and he goes over to chat with him. And I love seeing anybody express their feelings on camera, especially men, because it is in our culture just frowned upon, which is so stupid.
Super stupid.
However, I don't understand why he was this emotional. It seemed...
Yes.
Now, again, not judging his feelings. Feel the feelings. Feel it. Love them.
There was a lot of them, though.
Yes. I don't... Again, it just goes back to the fact that he is very confusing this episode. I don't understand what was going on. It's
erratic. That's the word I've been looking for. He is erratic this episode.
Yes.
He is all over the place. It's like one thing or another. It's very, very odd.
Yeah. So he says to Blake, I've been looking for my wife since I was 18.
So I'm not one to judge other people's priorities in life.
No.
But when you are 18 years old, you are not really aware of what that means, right? I think that does not take into a lot of, like, things that will happen in life. And I'm just taken aback by that. Like, what does that mean, do you think?
But I mean, I could say that I've been looking for my partner since I was 18 or younger.
Even the way you phrase that, though, sounds hell. I've been searching for my wife since I was 18. Like, I feel like there would be a lot of other things I'd search for. Maybe this is me. maybe I was searching out a lot more things at the age of 18 than like a wife. In fact, that wasn't even on like it wasn't even consideration.
Right,
I
but
figured,
objectively speaking, it's not unhealthy to be keeping your eyes peeled for your partner.
well, right. I guess. Excuse me. I guess what I'm seeing this as is that I was, you look for a partner, right? But having like the marriage, the wife, it's the term is what I'm thrown off by. Like, if you want a long-term relationship with someone who's loving and supportive, that's amazing. The wife thing, for some reason, that is what is odd to me. It's like, okay. I'm 18 years old, I want to make a commitment for my life. Like, it's a weird level of, you know what I mean? Like, having a partner, having a relationship, that's something that can evolve, that can grow. A wife is a very, like, definitive term that has a lot more connotation behind it. Maybe, is that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
A little much.
So Tayshia finds a present, and it is the invitation to Chris and Krystal's wedding. And Clay realizes in that moment that he's going to see Angela at the wedding because she's a bridesmaid. And it starts to get to him. I think that we can all relate to this situation.
Oh, knowing that your ex is going to be somewhere and that it didn't end well? Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we have a fun story that happened to us about that.
Oh,
long story, very short. Kyle's ex, right before me,
what do you mean an ex?
Yes, she was. In her mind, she was.
No, there you go.
She ended up serving. She was a server because we were all working in restaurants at the time.
That I worked at.
She served me when I met Kyle's mom for the first time, and we were all having dinner, and she was our server.
And then she walks over and just gives me like this stink face look. And, like, I know what she's going to say. I was, like, in the back. I was talking, like, whispering to the bartender, like, laughing, and also, like, ooh, this is not comfortable. She just looks and she's like, that's your mom, right? And I was like, yes. She just nods and walks away. And I was like...
All right, we're making it fast. So...
Start the story. I'm going to tell it.
So we go to the wedding. And Becca Kufrin's there, Kendall and Joe, Ben and Jess, Ashley and Jared, Adam and Raven, Bibiana... Kevin, Astrid, Annalise, Brooks. Nicole says that it felt like a class reunion with different grades, which I was like, yes, completely. That's absolutely the vibe.
Everyone's introducing each other.
And Caelynn is making it about her. She says that she doesn't want to be at a wedding because Dean broke up with her the night before. And again, like, okay, objectively, that's fine.
Yeah, I get that.
You're on a show and you're celebrating people who are from that show getting married. So either don't go and tell production that you're staying, or suck it up.
Yeah. I don't care what she thinks about the wedding. I don't like that she makes it about her. And I would have preferred her to stay on the beach.
Yeah. So she...
especially with how the whole thing turns out.
She's very bummed, and then Connor S. walks in, and she becomes very happy.
It's that same thing I was talking about. Sad Caelynn, happy Caelynn.
100%. And this is where, all of a sudden, out of the blue, like, literally, at least as a viewer, out of the blue, John Paul Jones starts saying that Derek is creepy and a fraud.
Oh, yeah.
And I wrote down, where did this come from? They're sitting in the room where the ceremony is going to be, and he brings it up to Tayshia, and Tayshia's looking at him like, dude, we're about to watch two people get married. Like,
can you not right now? Like, of all the time, this is what I was thinking of for all the relatively new people in the Bachelor franchise. This is like the next level of their audition, right? It's not on the beach. It's not in a contained area where they're all kind of on the same playing field. This is see, I coughed earlier too. I tried to breathe in my water.
Don't inhale water. Yeah.
So weird, right? Just for the people who are, like Tayshia, who are relatively new to the franchise, going to this wedding, this is like you're being kind of brought into like the larger group of the franchise. People have the biggest podcast. People have the most notoriety from the franchise. And I can see that John Paul Jones going off like he did to Tayshia, not only is it emotionally way out of left field, and also like probably very blindsiding for her, it's also got to be like internally very... I was putting myself in her shoes. That would be so embarrassing to be like, can you shut the fuck up for this one time and wait till we're on the beach, because right now we're at a wedding, people who were on the previous season who are now married. This is a larger deal than our dumb stuff on the beach.
Right.
Like, can we just shut it down until we get back in the sand? Feet are in the sand, let's talk it out.
Yeah.
But right now, we're wearing shoes, let's lock it up.
Totally. And Natalie, I agree with you. Brooks, who is from Desiree's season, for those of you who didn't watch Dez's season.
Man bun, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
They completely overshadowed him. He looked fabulous. Like, fabulous. Also, didn't know that he knew them. It was very weird. They focused so much on the whole Connor thing. Okay. So.
You the notes.
Then she basically says to JPJ, like, I want to explore it and figure it out myself. Like, just drop it for right now. And then we go to a commercial. We come back. Someone starts playing guitar at the wedding. Kyle thought it was Jed.
I was so worried it was Jed. I'm so happy it wasn't.
It was not. Thank goodness. The wedding ceremony happens. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was a lovely ceremony.
Totally.
And then we go to this, like, pre-reception kind of like mixer thing where everybody's hanging out, and John Paul Jones pulls Katie aside from, she's talking with like Chris's mom and all these people, and he tells Katie that Derek is full of shit and told him that he has taken advantage of his fans sexually and that he cannot sit back and watch this. And at this point, JPJ is being super inflammatory, super aggressive, super out of line. Like, these
are not things you say without, like, proof.
Or at a wedding of someone else.
Obviously that, first thing. But also, secondly, these are, like, really big problems that you're talking about. Like, these are huge issues. Like, it's concerning how quickly this came out of him. And like we said, it plays super erratic. Where did this come from? What happened here?
So then John Paul Jones is then talking to Demi after Katie and says that, and by the way, Demi has the utmost respect for Derek.
Right, and she's like, what are you saying? He's fine. This is, like, he's a good person, like we talked.
So John Paul Jones says that he has a podcast, which, I also wanted to clarify this. So, first of all,
the podcast.
Derek works as a vice president of a company that helps refinance loans and student loans. That's his primary job.
Yeah. He has a career external of The Bachelor.
Then he co-hosts a podcast for Betches, the company Betches, called The Bachelor, with this woman named Kay, they're fabulous. It's a very fun show. His whole career is not, he does not like work for Betches. He co-hosts the podcast there. Do they pay him? Yeah. He comes in and does things, so he gets paid for it. He does not need to drum up drama to do the show. As long as the show exists, they do the show. That would be like if one of us was there and we were like trying to stir up drama to have a show. There is plenty to talk about without stirring anything up.
Or making, like Emily says in the chat here, accusing someone of sexual misconduct is a huge accusation, a serious accusation.
Yes.
That, like, you're really jumping up to 11 out of nowhere here.
It's not okay.
No.
It's just really bad. So, then he grabs Derek. And he says, let me ask you a few things.
I'd like to also note here, the way he presents himself physically and verbally to Derek is incredibly aggressive. The way that he, like, the physicality of him walking over to him and, like, hey, I need to talk to you. And, like, pulling him over and then standing that uncomfortable level of close. I give props to Derek once showing his, emotional maturity, is to not respond to this. The way he was, you watch Derek's response, he's like, what? Okay.
And then he's like, you have a podcast. And he's like, uh-huh.
Yeah, I do.
And he's like, you invited me on your podcast.
Derek's
and he was like, yes, tracking.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so he says, let me ask you a few things. What are your intentions with Tayshia? Then he doesn't let him respond and says, the podcast is a very big part of your life. You invited me on your podcast. Then he says that Derek is using his being a public figure to be able to, quote, fuck his followers. Then Derek says, you're bulldozing through this. I'm trying to respond. And he says, no, I'm not. Derek asks him if he can respond and talk. JPJ will not let him talk. And then JPJ says, get out of my sight.
So let's recap. He says, I need to talk to you, which is a suggestion at a conversation. Maybe he literally meant, I need to talk to you.
Like no,
only
talk
I
at
talk.
you.
Yeah, only I talk now. I need to talk at you. Maybe that's what he meant. Who's to say? So let me have a conversation with you, pull you aside, and then he says all of his things, and then says, and now get out of my sight. That's a talking at and then a dismissal. That's not what Derek was brought into this for. And additionally, here's what I am most wondering about. Not particularly frustrated or enjoying this part. But actually, I enjoy this part. Because John Paul Jones is accusing Derek of using the show to promote his podcast. Something Derek has talked about 0 times leading up to this. And then John Paul Jones continues to talk about his podcast the rest of this episode. I want to know so badly the internals of the podcast Derek is on, because I bet you the next episode gets the most fucking downloads they've ever gotten in the entire history of the podcast, because John Paul Jones wouldn't shut up about it for the entire episode.
I'll promote it. In fact, everyone who listens to our podcast, anybody who is currently listening to The Right Reasons, I want you to go download this week's episode of The Bachelor and let them know that Right Reasons sent you.
Has it come out yet?
It'll come out later today.
Okay.
They're on this very similar schedule as we are. They also record in New York. I would love to do a collaboration with them.
Ooh.
Their office is in New York. The Wright Betches. Or the Wright Bachelor. I don't know.
Dumb.
We'll come up with it. Anyway, so Chris, we'll get back to the Derek and JPJ stuff. The biggest takeaway there is that John Paul Jones did not handle it even remotely decently. It was not okay. Derek handled it like a fucking champ.
Yep.
And then Chris and Krystal, tweet. Thank you, Janine. Anybody, Instagram, tweet at them. Let them know The Right Reasons is cheering them on. Please tell them we sent you.
Yeah.
Let's get their numbers up. That'd be amazing.
Not
that they need us.
They just got millions of people told about the podcast 100 times in an episode.
Yeah. Flaky Gaming says, I didn't even know Derek had a podcast until this episode.
I don't think a lot of people did. I think that... Oh, man. Yeah. Okay, so I think that this is at the point my notes now are caught up. So I'm here now.
So Chris and Krystal interrupt the mix and mingle to tell the group, it was a year ago, we were finding each other, we hope we can serve as inspiration. And they announce that only some of them are going to get to come to the actual reception.
Yeah.
Now, this, to me, was producer manipulated. Oh,
100%. You think Chris and Krystal are sitting there being like, I want this person, and I want this person, based off, how would they... This is 100% producer manipulation.
Very, very overtly heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So... From what I wrote down, and I kind of missed there who was coming because I was taking notes on the Derek JPJ thing.
Yeah.
Clay, Tayshia, Dylan, Hannah, Mike, Kristina, Blake, and Caelynn.
Yeah, I think
all went to the reception.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what's going on in the chat later when we get back to Derek. So we go to a commercial, we come back, and Blake is basically like Charlie Brown.
Oh my god, they're playing reception. The saddest music, and it's just him at the bar like this, just head in his hands.
And then he's at the table like this.
And he's just sad, and he's sipping his champagne, and he's just alone, and he's not dancing, and we know he loves to dance.
I know!
The poor guy, the whole time, is just so... sad looking, and they give him the full Charlie Brown treatment. I'm like, oh, buddy.
It was really sad.
We get the Caelynn thinking about, well, Connor's here, but I'm sad about Dean. But then Connor's like, hey, and she's like, oh my god, talk to me.
And then Kristina and Connor also talk. Kristina and Connor talk before Caelynn and Connor, based on what we see.
Right, then Caelynn and Connor go talk. Here's what I don't like. They talked like the normal... we just got like a supercut of all the things that people in the Bachelor franchise say to show interest in each other. Someone could be right in front of you that you don't know you'll end up with. I'm here trying to find someone. I'm trying to find someone. Your hair, you're pretty, blah. And then they just make out. What? They're just saying, like, generic things from the Bachelor franchise, like things they've heard other people say before. And then they're like, and now we kiss, because we've said the amount of appropriate, attractive things, and now we kiss.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
And this is when I made the note about Caelynn's internal attitude is determined by her external circumstances.
Yep.
And then back at the beach, Nicole is articulating herself quite well to Derek about her discomfort around Clay and Angela. And what I loved about this is that she made a distinction that she was totally cool with, obviously, them being in the same room and talking. She wanted to be there too.
Yeah.
And not necessarily there for, like, every moment of every conversation, but just there.
She wanted to be with Clay.
And I agree. Emily says in the chat, that was such a Mean Girls move. You can't sit with us.
Yeah.
100%. It felt very, it was just gross. I didn't like that.
So, speaking of gross and things I don't like, the way Annalise injects herself back into all the drama, like, who can I talk shit with? You seem upset. I'm going to talk shit with you about people on the beach. Annalise, move on. No one cares.
You're not on the show anymore.
So, Angela and Annalise talk shit about Clay a whole bunch, and then they assume what he's thinking a lot. Oh, he's missing you. Oh, he's this. No, he's not. He's probably worried as hell. He's very emotionally sensitive, as we've realized. He has a hard time communicating that. And he's probably super defensive because he knows the producers sent his beach girlfriend home.
Yeah. So Angela and Clay talk. They go outside. And Tayshia is watching, which is totally cool. I would probably be doing the same thing.
With one caveat.
Yeah.
Tayshia is not a lip reader nor a body language expert. And so I say what she takes away from this to be wholly inaccurate, in my opinion.
So, okay, I agree that she's not a body language expert. And the way that the energy was between Angela and Clay during this conversation, I would have also encouraged Nicole to go talk to Clay about it.
But with what would you encourage Nicole to say? Like, what
like if I were Tayshia?
Yeah, what would you say? Like, would you be like, would it be, you better get out ahead of this? Like, he maybe still having feelings, he looks concerned, or is it like, hey, he just talked to his ex, like, go see if he's okay?
Neither of those.
Oh, what would it be then?
I would probably have said something. Now, again, we did not get to see the whole conversation, so I can only comment on what we saw. I would have probably said, Nicole, last night, I saw that Clay and Angela had a conversation, which, we all knew would probably happen. It seemed a little tense, and it seemed a bit unresolved and uncomfortable. I want to encourage you to go talk to Clay about what happened, because I don't know what happened, but there was definitely some weird energy there. And so I just want to encourage you to have a conversation with him, and potentially if he wants to share with you what the conversation was about, that may be a good conversation to go have.
I agree with you on that. I think that would have been...
But I literally teach how to communicate.
Well, yeah. I would encourage him to go, definitely, or to her to go check in with him and see how that was, because as, we shared earlier, seeing, knowing that your partner is seeing their ex, and that's challenging, and there's a lot of drama that goes into it.
Like, I get it, man. Especially
with the way everyone was talking about how Angela showed up at the wedding, like, very much there to show off to Clay. And kind of...
Which I agree with.
Which, is also not something that I feel like it needs criticism. I think that it's also something that she's proving to herself, to him, whatever.
And it's also a very human thing. I think we've all been there.
Who doesn't go
I know I've been there where, like, I know an ex is going to be there, and I'm like, okay, I got to wear, like, this super hot dress.
I was with a super hot dress when my exes are around. Really gives them a clear message.
We've all done that.
Totally.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, no, there's not. I don't think there's anything wrong with how Angela showed up to the wedding. I do have an issue with the way that she talked to Clay a little bit. So
I agree.
Clay, he wants to let her know that he cares about her and wants to make sure that she's happy. It's awkward and fumbly. This is my notes. But I also think that's Clay. He is awkward and fumbly when he tries to communicate. So... here's what seems to have happened between the two of them before the show. He realized he wasn't into her the way she was into him. He wanted to move on, and the show was like, hey, you want to come on Paradise? And he's like, I do actually want to go explore myself, other relationships. I don't want to be with this person anymore. I'm going to move on. So he broke up with her.
Although we still don't know why. And I wish that even if it was, I don't know why, I just knew it wasn't right. I wish that we could get that. It's so, they're not even alluding to what happened.
I get that. And I also think it's a lot to ask from somebody who's had a hard time communicating this level of stuff.
I get it.
Especially now you're being not cornered, you're being positioned around your ex-girlfriend on camera at a wedding. For anyone who's ever had to have this type of conversation with an ex, let's all just give ourselves like a pat on the back that we never had to do it on national television, recorded television. Oh my God, I'm so thankful that the cameras weren't there that day in the restaurant.
Yeah, if any of my exes are watching this, like...
Let's all be happy we didn't do that on TV. So
thank goodness that there were no cameras.
Angela responds that she can't understand how he could be on Paradise, which is her not understanding his actions because she is thinking that he's thinking the way she is. Does that make sense?
Wait, say that again.
She is assuming Clay is viewing the relationship the same. Angela. Angela is assuming Clay is viewing the relationship and what happened the same way she is. She is inserting her reality into his choices.
Correct.
Which is a problem because if he broke up with her, of course she's not going to understand why he's there or how he's there. Because that's not her decision to make. If one partner wants to leave a relationship, the other partner, too bad. The other one's made a decision. Whether or not that's fun or easy or the life things are built up around it, they weren't married, they didn't have a house together, they didn't have a dog together from all I know.
But, okay, and this is where Natalie just popped up in the chat and I was just about to say what she put. It does seem odd, though, that they were talking about kids, they were looking at houses, they were doing all these things, and he never told her that he loved her, and we don't know why the relationship ended. It seems like we're getting so many details of their relationship, and to leave out the why it ended, to me, is leaving out a very important piece of this puzzle.
Which we may never get. I would love to know more about it. But in this circumstance, the way it plays out, I see her as the aggressor in this circumstance, and he's trying to explain, because he ends it saying, you know, he apologizes for the way things ended. That he cares about her, he thinks she's amazing. He's trying to explain that he's not the one for her, and he's sorry if that hurts that he left. And so I don't know what happened. A lot of people talk about whether or not they want to have children before the I love yous come out, because there's, everyone's got a list they want to check off first.
That's different. It didn't sound like they were talking about if they theoretically wanted kids. It sounds like they were talking about having kids together.
Well, and then I would want to have said that I love you before we talk about having kids together.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, they don't communicate super well.
No, and look, there's no, you have to say this before that.
There's no actual checklist.
Right. It's just, personally, this would all make so much more sense to me if I understood why he chose to end it.
Right.
Janine says, maybe he just wasn't that into her. That may be the case, but his actions spoke otherwise. And I think that is where the confusion is on my side. Maybe for some of you, let us know in the chat. And perhaps for Angela, and even then going down to Annalise, who obviously didn't express them well, but perhaps that's where her confusion came from too.
Right.
Okay, so we get back to the beach, and Demi says to John Paul Jones, do you want to talk about what happened with Derek? And he says, no, it had to happen. And Demi makes my favorite face of the episode where she goes...
It's like, the camera's 20 feet away, and you see it's kind of grainy, and John Paul Jones is like, no, and you see Demi sort of... she just makes this weird frowny face, okay.
So then we cut over to the camera. Derek is at the bar by himself, and he is filling Wells in on what happens. And Wells is like, are you going to go sit over there with everybody? And Derek says, no, I want to give him his space.
He's confused by what happened.
Clearly, he got worked up about something. I'm very confused. And he starts filling Wells in on what happened. And I will say that the way that Derek described it to Wells was very accurate. And it's hard. It is so hard to be that accurate when you were emotionally ambushed. Right? It's really easy to be like, I don't know, dude. I was just sitting there, and then, he just came, he said it in a very factual way. And then John Paul Jones walks over, and starts, this is like, my stomach actually hurts talking about this. I could not go to sleep last night. I was so fired up about this.
As per your Instagram stories.
If you don't follow me on Instagram
the Wright
or Kyle.
_Rachel.
Yeah, the WRIGHT _ RACHEL.
Sure.
I couldn't. I can't.
So here's what happens.
This is beyond.
John Paul Jones shows up at the bar, clearly to antagonize Derek. Because Wells and Derek are talking by themselves. There's no one else there. This is also after, I want to remind you that John Paul Jones told Demi that he's not going to do it, talk about it anymore. That doesn't need to be talked about. So he goes over to the bar, and Wells is like, hey man, how you doing? He's like, I'm good. I took the trash out, and then winked at Derek, which is clearly him continuing the issue when he just said he wasn't going to continue the issue. And so Derek wants to address us with him, but John Paul Jones just talks over him. So Derek says something, and John Paul Jones goes, nope, just over him. This is like watching, so Derek is 32, John Paul Jones is 24. This was watching a 32-year-old talk to a 14-year-old, where they are just not wanting to hear what you have to say. They're talking over you.
But like to your parent.
Yeah.
Not even like to a friend. It's like you are talking to a parent. Nope.
So Derek's like, hey man, I wanted to bring you on my podcast because after this ends, this is another meta conversation that I really liked. He's like, after this, we get to do a lot of cool shit. Like, we get to go travel, we get to go to a bunch of Bachelor parties, like Bachelor franchise parties. We get to go to all these, nightclubs, have all these things. Like, they do a lot after this show, which, you'll see on social media as soon as Paradise ends. He was inviting John Paul Jones on for the podcast to have fun, because that's what it is. Which John Paul Jones responds with, don't insult my intelligence, Derek.
So, okay, pause. Let's just press pause. There have been multiple times that I have reached out to multiple people and said, hey, you should totally come on our podcast. Whether it is this podcast, talking to a Bachelor person. We used to have a podcast that's currently on hiatus for our business where we had some really incredible guests. I have said, I cannot even count how many times to people, oh my gosh, you should totally come on our podcast. Because I want to give that person a platform to talk to the people who are listening to us.
Yep.
For John Paul Jones to somehow take Derek's invitation and turn it into an insult of his intelligence is so far off of the plane of anything. It was so bizarre. It was so bizarre. It made zero sense. And to continue to insult, I think at this point, I just started to, I was seeing stars. But he brought up you told me that you can fuck your followers thing again.
It was, I think he's telling somebody else about that right after he says, I need to walk away from this and don't talk to me for the rest of the time we're on the show. I wrote down, JPJ keeps attacking Derek for taking advantage of women, which is kind of a super inflammatory thing to say. And here's my larger issue with this, is that, okay, so, the chat nails it. Cassie says JPJ might as well cover his ears and be like, la, 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 can't hear you. Totally agree.
That's exactly what he was doing.
The way I wrote down, this is like watching a child talk to an adult. It's the most antagonistic and childish communication style I have seen on the show to date. Yeah. Granted, I have not seen as much of it as Rachel has, but I think, am I on there?
No, in recent memory, yes.
And antagonistic. In this moment, I'm actually more impressed with the beach conversation with Derek than at the wedding, because someone who is not nearly as in good control of his emotions and temperament would have started a fight in that situation, because the things that John Paul Jones was saying, especially in a post-Me Too movement culture, that's a big deal. And I would have a hard time not getting physically confrontational at that point.
Imagine somebody accusing you of...
Dude. After what Derek has shown his emotional sensitivity and vulnerability to be on this season especially, it's super messed up to say. And There was one other thing I was going to say about this.
It just, while you think about that, it really bothered me that John Paul Jones did not bring any awareness of Derek's situation. And Derek even brings up, dude, do you know what I have just been through with this Demi situation? Like, as to say, I'm not playing a game. I'm not, like, John Paul Jones tossed him a grenade.
Right.
And Derek was like, okay, let me explain how I can defuse this. And John Paul Jones was like, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear anything. It was...
Yeah.
I
remember my bigger problem.
Yeah, please.
Here's my bigger problem.
Oh, yeah, verbal bomb. See, there you go.
Good call, Maria, in the chat. My issue, similar to the Caelynn issue, is production allowing this to happen and making it all the way through all the edits. We got to see John Paul Jones trash Derek all episode. All episode. And Derek gets shown talking to Wells about it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
We don't get to see him defend himself. John Paul Jones obviously didn't let him defend himself. But what we got to see is a giant trash heap for the majority of the episode with no counter-argument or defense allowed, even. We just got to see someone get a platform. Granted, he was given enough rope. John Paul Jones was given enough rope by production to hang himself with, which is how the metaphor works. Like, you keep getting more and more rope, and then all of a sudden, now you have enough to hang yourself with. Which, they gave him a pedestal. He got onto it and started saying a bunch of stuff, so now he made himself look like an asshole. That's definitely for sure. He also was given the time to completely trash somebody, and I assume Derek is getting some hate today about what John Paul Jones said. If people believe John Paul Jones...
That's my problem.
That's it, is that you allowed this person to spread, from all we know, complete fabrications. And yet, people have proven that they are not capable of realizing people lie on the internet, and they're going to take that and run with it.
Yeah.
And Derek's going to get hate as a result.
Which is not fair, considering he did not get a chance to defend himself.
At all.
We don't know if there is any factual anything in what John Paul Jones says, or said. I don't believe that there is, because the fact that he took his invitation to be on his podcast. So Janine asks, is it production's responsibility to manage these interactions? They produce all of the interactions. Now, it's also their responsibility to choose what gets aired. Right. There's a reason why we get to see better things about some people, more things about other people. Mm-hmm. And it's incredibly... it's the same thing as with Luke P. and Hannah's season.
Yeah.
It is irresponsible to show something on TV to a massive audience without giving education around what it is.
Right. Right. It's...
Like, he slandered Derek without giving Derek an opportunity to say anything back. And even production could have put in an ITM of Derek saying, this is not true.
Yeah, we didn't even get that from him.
Like, nothing.
I wonder if, regardless, I guarantee the non-disclosure agreements they sign have a clause around this, but I wonder if Derek, outside of the show, would actually have grounds to file a lawsuit for slander against John Paul Jones.
I don't think so.
Purely about that.
I think the NDA covers it.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. If the NDA didn't exist, I think this actually qualifies for a pretty decent slander case because of what it is.
Right, but he was talking to him.
It's true. And because it was massively produced.
Yeah. Okay, so my stomach hurt after that. I essentially checked out. I was so infuriated that this got aired this way. I felt for Derek after what he has already been through emotionally at the beginning parts of the show. Yeah. Then to have this happen, it's like, I just felt for him.
So we go to a commercial break after letting the John Paul Jones and Derek thing settle. We come back to Blake is now... I was about to say Blake. We come back to Blake on the beach, and people are asking, like, hey, what happened? How was the whole thing? And he assesses that Angela is still into Clay, and Clay has had a rough night. I find that so interesting. that was Blake's assessment, almost unprompted. Because they're like, how was the night? And he goes, well, and goes right into that. It's really interesting. Because it kind of lines up with what I was thinking.
Yeah, so then Connor S. comes in. He grabs Caelynn and then Kristina. And Kristina makes a comment that makes actually no sense. I mean, okay. Kristina says that it's weird that Caelynn goes after her leftovers. Which, okay, yes, I understand she dated Dean last season of Bachelor in Paradise. And then Caelynn dated him this season of Bachelor in Paradise. Okay. Kristina dated Blake. And then Caelynn hooked up with Blake. I get that. Okay. It's also a very small Bachelor world. So, like, lots of people, if you want to call it, quote-unquote, leftovers. I don't like that term. I think it's ridiculous. But, objectively speaking, Connor and Caelynn made out the night before. Not Kristina and Connor.
Yeah.
These are not... Connor's not her leftovers. Connor's nothing to her right now.
Right. And this is also the pattern of Caelynn being sad and then getting what she wants. So she and Connor go talk first. And then Connor picks Kristina. And then while Connor's talking to Kristina, Caelynn just devolves into this negativity. Like, ugh, I don't know why I'm here. I'm sad about Dean. I'm blah, blah, blah. And then
he's
Connor's
gonna take Kristina.
Hey,
I'm not going to
do you want to go on the date? And she's like, oh my God, I do.
Yeah, so they go on a date.
Level out.
It's a painting with your body date.
Okay, so I had one comment about this. Is it a cute date? Sure. My criticism is that they are not good at painting because they mixed all the colors, which makes the color just gray.
Kyle was like thinking about this like from a logical perspective.
But there's
it's just an excuse to roll around.
There is an old Levi's commercial in which they do this. I remember it's from like early 2000s, maybe late 90s. It's a Levi's commercial. The guy paints, he makes out with a girl with various shades of color and paint. The two of them like roll around making out, and then he hangs the pants they were wearing, the Levi's, up on the wall, and that's the art form made, right? And they use different colors, and they blend together really well. This is not that. This is just a giant mess of like dark green and gray, and it was stupid.
It's an excuse to roll around and make out with wet stuff on you.
I understand that. They did not make art. Go do the mud bath thing. Go do, go in a hot tub. I don't know.
Fair. That's
go in a hot tub.
So, while they're on this date, Connor asks her to be open and honest and not lead each other on at any point, which is great. And meanwhile, while they're on the date, Mike and Clay are talking about his relationship with Angela, which I really appreciated. It's, Lucy.
Yeah, I know, chat. They're not trying to paint. I just do it better.
Anyway. I loved this conversation between Mike and Clay. I love Mike. You all know this.
Yeah.
I just think he's fabulous.
Yep.
And Nicole pulls Clay, finally, to talk to him after talking with Tayshia. And Clay tells Nicole that they talked.
Yeah, and Clay had mentioned to Mike that he's sad Angela is still bitter. And he just feels sad about the situation, which I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that, I did not like that Tayshia tried to get Nicole a little riled up in her suggesting she goes and talk to him because she's like, his hand was on her leg and there was connection. You don't know that. You know nothing. You watch two people talk. And that's my problem here is that Tayshia can say, hey, they talked in a private room. Maybe go check in with him to see how that went. That's fine.
I understand that. I also understand that with emotions riding so high in the container of the show, that she's looking out for her friend, and that, again, Tayshia was shook by the JPJ Derek thing, and I think that just all accumulates. I'm not giving her an excuse.
I agree with you. I think that's completely understandable. I also think that probably last night around 10:15 Eastern, when this episode was over, Tayshia got a text from Clay being like, really?
I mean, probably.
Throw me under the bus a little bit. I mean, we all know it worked this, but really?
So was that the end? Because that's where my notes end.
Kristina complains. Caelynn and Connor are happy around each other. There's the talk with Nicole. And then
that was it.
That's it.
Then we see next week on Bachelor in Paradise.
Yeah.
The preview is that Angela is coming to the beach.
Shocking.
Which I have nothing against Angela. I think I want to make that clear. I don't think that she's done anything wrong. I think that she has just as much of a right to go on Paradise as Clay does.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong here. It's just obvious why she's coming. Like, we see you, producers. We understand.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
There's a shocking person leaving. Dean shades his mustache and comes back. And then JPJ and Derek argue more. Okay. We'll see.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. There is one thing that's very important for y'all to note for next week. Kyle and I will be traveling in LA. We leave for Los Angeles tomorrow.
Yep.
We have some meetings, and we're doing a couple days at Disneyland, which is very exciting.
Disneyland.
But with that being said, our flight back is on Wednesday. So we will be going live on Thursday of next week. So it will be Thursday, September 5th at 9:30 Eastern.
9:30 Eastern.
So I will put the YouTube live event up on YouTube, but just for those of you who do join us live, which we love having you here, thank you. Do. That will be then, and if you listen to the podcast or catch the recording and you don't see it up on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday night, that's why.
Yeah.
So we will be live 9:30 Eastern on Thursday, September 5th to discuss week 5 of Bachelor in Paradise.
Should be a doozy.
And I think that is it.
I think that's it. Well, thank you so much for staying on with us on live. If you were here live, if you're watching the recording, that's awesome too. See, I'm trying to inhale water again.
Don't forget to click the thumbs up on this video and come hang out with us on Instagram. I know a ton of you have joined us over there in the past couple weeks, and it's been really fun to interact with you both on our The Right Reasons account and on our personal accounts. It's fun to kind of get to know you off of, just the YouTube. So thank you all so much. We adore you. Don't forget to give Derek and the Bachelor podcast some extra love this week. Let him know we sent you. And thanks again for being wonderful. We love you. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.